everybody, Courtney here at Smitty's Fly Box, and we are going to be tying our January intermediate tying box fly, which is a half-hatched emerger. This is a great little pattern for whenever you see mayflies starting to hatch and fish are feeding just below the surface. They're not actually rising for adults yet, but they're taking these emerging nymphs that are swimming to the top to hatch, and this is a great imitation for those. So we'll go ahead and get started here, and I just lay down a base layer of thread on my hook shank. We're going to tie in our tail here, and for this color variation, you have 3 different color variations that you would have got in your box. I'm going to do the BWO version because that's kind of what we're going to start seeing here relatively soon after the winter breaks here. But I'm going to take a small section of gray poly yarn, so this will kind of act as our shuck. All you need is just a few strands of this, and we're just going to tie that in just right here to the back of the fly, just right above the barb of the hook. We'll do a loose gathering wrap and pinch that down really tight with the thread here. Cover up these butt ends and work my way back here. So my thread's hanging just above the barb of the hook. I'm going to trim this. I like to trim it so it's about 3/4 of the length of the hook or so. Okay, so our next material we're going to tie in is going to be our abdomen of our fly, and this is just going to be our turkey biots. So I'm just going to take a turkey biot here, just pick this from this side that's laying down. These are much stiffer feathers, easier to work with. They create a cleaner body than if you were to use this other side here. Notice I didn't cut that off the stem. I like to peel those off the stem. And I'm going to rotate that feather so the notch on this biot is facing down. If you can see that in the camera, but there's a notch there back here where I pulled it off, this little notch right here, and I want that facing down towards my desk. We'll tie this in about a quarter way of the biot, the quarter of the length of the biot. We're going to tie that down. Notice I don't tie it in by the tip. I don't want to use the tip there. It's not going to cover much of the hook shank when I wrap. I want to use this thicker portion back here. So I'll wrap forward to just past the halfway point, and now I'm going to start to bring this biot forward. So I just carefully work this around the hook shank here, and I don't want to cover up my previous wrap. So I want to do one wrap right in front of the next. That way you get nice even segmentation. And then we can bring our thread up and over, anchor that down, and then we can cut this off here. Take out our excess there. Okay, so there's our abdomen of our fly. So I like to use those biots because they give you just a nice segmentation, and the little ridges here I think just look really good for emerger style patterns there, rather than the smooth body. Kind of gives it that look that this bug is hatching and it's got a lot of stuff going on as it starts to mutate into that adult. Okay, next we're going to tie in our back of our fly here. So we are going to take some more of this poly yarn, and again this is the gray poly yarn that we're using. Okay, so now I'm gonna take a little bit more than what I did for the tail, and just make sure that all these ends are just nice and even, and I'm going to tie those in just right on top of the hook shank. Again, just a loose gathering wrap. Try to keep all those fibers up on top of the hook. We'll cover those up with our thread here. I'm going to leave that hanging out the back for now. Okay, and then next we're going to tie in our little foam. So this kind of acts as the air sac for this emerger as it starts to swim to the top. And these little wings that are going to start to appear as this emerger starts to take life into an adult. But we don't want it to get that far. We want the fish to eat it before it becomes an adult. So I'm just going to take a really thin strip of this 1 millimeter white foam and tie that down to the hook shank there. Okay, and now I'm going to just fold this. So I fold it and then just kind of push back. and anchor that down again. Cut out our excess here. Okay, and now all we're going to do here is just cover up all this mess with our dubbing. Okay, so I'm going to take a little bit of hares here. This is just natural hares ear dubbing. And I like this look for this just because it's so buggy, especially when you brush it out. It just kind of gives this emerger some really good movement and some life here. So this fly is designed just to sit right in the film. You can fish it deeper in the water column if you want, but I like to fish it just right underneath the surface. So I'm going to wrap back behind my foam, not behind my yarn, but behind my foam, and just build a little buggy thorax here. You don't need a lot of dubbing. Leave yourself some little space there to do your whip finish. Okay, so we're going to bring our poly yarn up and over, and I like to just move this poly yarn around, just kind of get it to encase that little foam wing. And I'll bring my thread up and around, just right behind the eye of the hook. Tie that down tight. And then I'll trim out these little fibers I didn't quite grab. I like to separate these. Just try to do half and half. Fold them back. And tie those down. This way you can create a nice clean head on the fly, and it gives just an extra movement. We'll trim those after we whip finish. Just like to pull these legs back. I just trim them just past the little bubble. And now I just like to take my Velcro brush here and just kind of brush this hare's ear dubbing out a little bit. And there you go. There's a little half-hatched emerger. This thing will sit just perfectly under the film once it gets wet. So lots of different ways to fish these. You can trail these off of a dry, just fish them under an indicator, and I think they work really well. So this coming spring, we start to see mayflies coming out, and trout are feeding off these emergers. Give this fly a shot.